Because actually, a lot of what Shantideva is saying is about meaning, is about what you in linguistics you would call that semantics. And semantics are very important to him. So if I translate it, for instance, we all say that a chair is a chair. So we arrive at that notion, like this object is a chair, by convention. Because we all agree around this that the bit of language that we hear, if we say chair, covers this part of reality, which is an object that you sit on with four legs and a backrest, for instance. So we call that a chair. And that is conventional reality, because there is in language a certain chairness to a chair. Because, for instance, I can sit on a table, but I'll never call it a chair. And chair can also have different meanings. For instance, it's also the person who chairs a meeting, for instance. And it means something else by chair. So another part of reality is covered by that word. Everybody still with me? Exactly. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's actually the analogy is very good. Yes, so that is conventional reality, and actually it only exists at the level of language. But we think that that language, that the meaning chair, actually is the object chair. So we assume that there is a certain chairness to the object that makes it a chair. So actually we would say that that chair exists from its own side, as a solid entity. But then, for instance, we take an axe and we chop off the chair. So, for instance, if we take the legs off, we might still say it's a chair. If we say, okay, I'll also chop off the backrest, then we might still recognize it as a chair, and we might still refer it to a chair. But for instance, if I had a big shredder and I threw everything in, and it sort of spewed out all kinds of bits of wood and stuff, on the other hand, would I still call it a chair? Yes, but for the mulch to have a solid existence, it would somehow have to be included in the existence of chair. But yet we call a chair, and we don't call it potential mulch. We might, but we usually don't. Exactly. So what we see as solid only exists in the convention that we arrive at almost by a consensus. But ultimate reality teaches that all those concepts are, at the end of the day, empty. They're void. And they're not void because there is nothing there. They're void because they don't actually refer to anything. At the end of the day, we don't have language enough, or language that actually covers the essence of the phenomena around us. And so that is what Shantideva says. He says, well, there are two kinds of truth: the conventional truth, that's the truth that we arrive at by consensus, and there is ultimate reality. And he also says something very meaningful. He says ultimate reality is beyond the scope of the intellect. Now, why would that be? Why would ultimate reality be beyond the scope of the intellect? This is a trick question, but why would that be? Yeah, why can't we describe it? Because you're right, it functions at the level of language, but why can't we describe it? Because there is no language. No, why wouldn't there be language? Because we have it, yes, to put labels on things. Yes. Yes. Yeah, we give it meaning, and by meaning we separate it. Yes. All excellent answers. No, and the short answer would be that the intellect itself, thinking itself, because it's so bound up in language, is actually part of conventional reality and never of ultimate reality. And he's talking about intellect, see? Not about mind. But mind to him is something else, but he's talking about intellect. And intellect divides, it separates this from that. And that is exactly what we do when we assign meaning to phenomena. We say, this is a chair, that is a table. And whatever is a chair can't be a table. And whatever is a table can't be a chair. And we also say something else, because we say self. And we actually mean something by it. And we think that self exists from its own side. So actually we say, this is myself, this is yourself. This is me, this is him. And by that we put separations between us and between other sentient beings. And if you track back to the very first chapter of the Bodhicaryavatara, actually it says that bodhicitta, so the mind of enlightenment, arises when we stop making those distinctions between self and others. Yes, but you see how we are... No, but you see, Phoenix Mike, how we are one in ultimate reality. But we're still separate in conventional reality. Because both realities exist at the same time. So it isn't as if conventional reality stops being there when we only focus on ultimate reality, and also it is true that while conventional reality is there, ultimate reality is there too, all the time. So it's like a cubist painting. You see all sides of the object at the same time. Right. Yeah, everyone there, we're clear to go on? You can always go back here, explore further. Okay, cool. Then we go on with verse 3. And verse 3 reads, in the light of this, so he refers back to verse 2, which we now perfectly understand. He refers back and he says, in the light of this, people are seen to be of two types, the contemplative and the ordinary person. The ordinary folks are superseded by the contemplatives. And the editor in my text adds, the contemplative perceives the ordinary worldly person's viewpoint to be incorrect. And I'll go on with verse 4 because they're of a unit due to the difference in their intelligence. Even contemplatives are refuted by successfully higher ones by means of analogies, accepted by both parties regardless of what they aim to prove. Then he says in verse 5, ordinary people see and imagine things as real and not illusory. That is what we've just been discussing. It is in this respect that there is disagreement between the contemplatives and the ordinary people. Even the objects of direct perception, such as form and the like, are established by consensus, that's conventional reality, and not by verifying cognition. That consensus is false, as is the general agreement that pure things are impure, for example. Okay. So, what is happening here? I'll quote you a bit from the commentary by Pavel Rinpoche, which is the classic commentary on chapter 9. And it reads like follows, but I'll also paraphrase it because it's highly technical. The third part, and by this Pavel Rinpoche means identifying the type of person who can establish the nature of the two